three, four, five. 5 tips today to help you have more confidence with your dating experience. And I'm talking to you though, to those of you who really struggle, like I did, in the romantic world my whole life. Which some say that's because of Disney and like all the Disney movies I watched, which I'm guilty. I love them as a kid growing up. Um, but I always had this thought that I didn't really have any influence or control over who I was going to fall in love with or like who I was going to get married to when I got older. And I didn't understand that as a child. I just knew that I thought that whoever was meant to be for me would just pop up, like show up at my doorstep, one day, like that it didn't really matter what I did or anything, that they were just going to show up and rescue me. Wouldn't have been so dramatic in my head necessarily, but just the thought that whoever comes my way or whoever is meant to be with me is just going to show up. And then it'll just be happily ever after. For those of you that can relate to this, I really want to help you because it was a struggle for me growing up, especially when everything I ever really wanted was just to find my person. It was just to find the person that I connected with. That was what excited me from really like the youngest age. But it was always like the most difficult thing for me to do. I could do good at school. I could practice and learn a sport. In my mind, it's like I could do anything that I really wanted if I could put effort into it. But finding my person just seemed like something I didn't have any control over, any way to make it easier, or any way to kind of speed it along, or whatever it was that, like I said, I didn't really understand as a child, that I understand more now. But I want to help. I want to help with that because what I've learned has made a huge difference in the way that I view dating or marriage or just romantic relationships in general, and like finding your person. I view it much differently now than I did growing up. So tip number 1, look for the person that you want to be with in the place you would want them to be in. And I know that in a way this sounds simple, but it's so like important. Like that makes so much sense, but I don't see a lot of people doing that. A lot of people go on dating apps. They go to bars. They go to clubs, and they just try to pick up someone. Well, if that's not really the type of person that you would want to have in a real relationship, then why would we expect that that's what we're going to find when we go to those places? Right? So if you want someone that enjoys adventure or enjoys the outdoors or something like that, because you want to connect with somebody on that level because that's really interesting to you and you value that, spend a lot of time in those places. So on a hiking trail, or join some kind of club where that's something that you do every weekend. Spend your time at the beach or somewhere out, a dog park, somewhere outdoors that is a place you connect with, and spend your time there and connect with people there versus maybe just the fast, easy way. But we all kind of already know how that typically ends up anyway. So and you can apply that to anything. It doesn't have to be outdoors. It could be, if you want to connect with someone with music, spend a lot of time at those type of concerts or learn to play an instrument. Tip number 2, ladies and gentlemen, know what you want before you go on that date. No, ladies, if you want a serious relationship and you want a guy that wants a serious relationship, know that going in, communicate that, and observe if they act like they're someone that can be in a serious relationship. If not, then there's your answer. Don't pretend to be something that you're not to get them to like you. Do you want them to like you if they're not the type of person that you want to be in a long-term committed relationship? Because they can't do that? Because they rather have more casual relationships? Think about it. Think about what you truly want and where you truly want to end up going into it. Men, if you want a girl that just wants to casually date, tell them that. You can weed out the ones that are more serious quicker that way. If there was just more upfront and honesty from the get-go on dating, everything would be so much more simplified. And you would, instead of getting less of what you want, you would actually get more. Because there are people that want the same thing as you. Sometimes people are just afraid to admit what they actually want. Know what you want, which is difficult sometimes. Communicate it, and then be okay if that person doesn't want the same thing. It's not the end-all be-all. Because eventually, that will pan out and you're not going to be happy later. If someone doesn't want the same thing as you, that it's not a personal rejection. It's nothing against you. It just means that they're not the right one to connect with you in that way, but that somebody else is. Something I definitely didn't understand growing up. And I want you to understand that. I want you to save yourself the time and effort and pain because you can. And then tip number 3, get to know their friends and their family faster. I hear sometimes people like wanting to wait to meet friends and family until later. Maybe in some instances that's okay, but that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me if you want to save time. If you really want to make the experience a little bit easier and get to know the person faster, get to know their family and friends. Really observe that. People tend to be most like the people that they hang around the most. That's important to realize too. If you really get along with their family and their friends and their values match up and that's great. Like, that's awesome. Embrace that. But if not, that is something to consider. That is a huge deal. And it will give you a lot of insight into who the person is that you potentially want to be with. Number 4. Guys, when you're planning the dates, simplify them. And I don't mean to put all the pressure on you. Ladies also, it just tends to be, men do tend to be the ones asking out, setting up the dates, at least at first, usually. Simplify everything. Things don't have to be so pressure. There doesn't need to be a lot of pressure. There doesn't need to be fancy, unless you want the lady to be all superficial and, you want, the judgment of money and stuff like that too, unless that's what you value, don't put so much pressure. A good person isn't going to judge you on if you take them to the fanciest restaurant possible and spend the most money possible that you can. An honest person that just really wants to get to know you and really is interested in you is not going to be as interested in that. Save that for if you guys really connect, and save that for, bigger milestones later on. Take the pressure off. Take the pressure off of the superficial, where you go, how much you spend, that type of thing. I'm not saying don't put in any effort at all, and don't, you can wear something nice, or, spray your nice cologne or whatever it is. But take some of the pressure off of it needing to be, like in the movies. Real people connect by talking and focusing on each other and getting to know each other and actually spending quality time together. It's not so much about where. And lastly, number 5, I want to encourage you to have the confidence to be upfront about some of your difficulties. So some of the difficulties that you have in life, which we all do, we all have insecurities, struggles, and things that we need to work on. But there comes a point when there's a lot of benefit when you are upfront and honest, and in just an accepting way, like, I just accept this about myself, but this is something I'm struggling with. It's something I want to work on. And how does that affect you, or what does that mean to you? And tell them. If you really have a struggle with spending too much money on shopping sprees, but you're working on it, maybe say that. And that's even still kind of like an easier thing to maybe admit or accept. Let's say you have trust issues, something that I still work on big time. When you've been hurt throughout your life, you have trust issues. It's going to happen. Tell that to the person. Explain why. Tell them that you have these problems, and ask them if that is something that they are able to handle, or if that's going to be too triggering for them. Just be upfront and honest. I know it's kind of like the same theme, but just have the confidence enough to accept yourself the way that you are. And that also makes you relatable. That also makes you stand out from other people. When you have the courage and the confidence and the acceptance in yourself to admit that, and admit that you're working on it. And that doesn't mean don't work on it. Don't just say that and not work on it. You have to actually be working on it, of course. But a lot of people struggle with even just admitting some of the insecurities and struggles that they have. We tend to think that people will reject us automatically if they know anything terrible about us. I find that that's not true most of the time. And if they do kind of judge you, then you weed them out faster. You don't need that in your life. None of us do. We need people that are going to support us. And typically you will find that people can relate to people that are having struggles, because we all have struggles. So I just challenge you to not be so afraid of it. Don't give your struggles so much power over you. Sometimes just having the strength to admit them and admit that you're working on them, and then actually working on them, helps you kind of deal with them and get through them in its own kind of way. And sometimes that brings people closer together. I've actually had that in my past, where I've actually been upfront honest about some of my difficulties, and that's actually brought the person closer to me. Of course, I could also say maybe it wasn't necessarily in a healthy way. But my point was that it wasn't like instant rejection. It wasn't like, they run off scared. That's not the case most of the time. And like I said, if it is, let them go. It was probably never going to work anyway. If you can't have any depth with somebody, if you can't go deep with somebody and really be open and communicate and vulnerable, there's not really going to be much of a relationship anyway. And that's just kind of the truth. And we have to kind of accept that also. It's not personal. Most things are not personal. It's not against you. Okay. You guys can have great dating experiences. I hope this helped. I hope this reaches that person out there that is like me and was like me when I was younger, because I needed to hear this a long time ago. So thank you guys. Hope you have a good day. I'll see you later.